What up, people? Welcome to the Doing Everything Different podcast. I'm your host, Devin Lars, and I just want to take the time to say Happy New Year. You made it through. 2023, I feel like was a wild year for a lot of people. I think there was a lot of uncertainty just in the world and around just the recession that we're headed into. There were a lot of layoffs. I feel like it was a lot of uncertainty this year or last year. And looking at 2024, we got an election year and things are probably going to be a little bit more uncertain as we start to go through this year. But I think that there's always opportunities in the midst of chaos. And I think the big thing that I've been doing a lot of reflecting off of last year, at the end of the year, everybody I feel like looks at their last year of what they've accomplished, the challenges that they went through, and then looks ahead at the next year of what they want to, fix and improve. And I think a lot of the things that kind of going back to a couple episodes ago, I forgot what number it was, but when I talked about just staying in the game, in life, business, you're going to deal with a lot of ups and downs, and you're going to deal with a lot of challenges. And I think, looking back at 2023, there were just a lot of challenges that had to be navigated with my team and I, and a lot of changes and ups and downs and, figuring things out. And I think with entrepreneurship, it's just so interesting because there is no roadmap. There is no blueprint. There is no, if you do X, Y, and Z, you're going to be successful. There's no telling because things change. The market changes, people change, customers change, times change, technology changes, you change, so much stuff is so there's so many different factors. But I really was thinking around a couple concepts. One is that your business will never outgrow where you are personally. And I think the more that you do the work on yourself, the more success you will see. I just feel like in life, and that's been my experience. And a lot of the times when things don't feel like they're going to work out, or you feel like you don't know exactly how it's going to all come together, the biggest thing that I've learned is just show up. Like no matter how you're feeling about it, no matter whatever it is that we get in our feelings, right? And get emotional a lot of times, especially with entrepreneurship, especially with creatives, things of that nature. And so just showing up is so much of the battle that I found. Once you show up and you start the process and you get into the groove of things, you'll start to learn, you'll start to adapt, you'll start to maneuver, you'll start to figure things out in real time. And I think there's no better teacher than experience. And there's no better teacher than getting in and just, figuring it out. I think Steve Harvey said it or something like you're building a plane while you're flying or whatever, while you're falling, you're building a plane. And I think it makes sense of just getting in the game. And so as I'm thinking about 2024, if you're thinking about an idea, if you're thinking about starting that business, if you're thinking about, changing that job, if you're thinking about just any new thing that you want to add into your life, all I can say is just show up. Just try and show up. Don't worry about the details of exactly how it's going to work. Don't worry about the details of, needing to know everything and having a plan before you could jump in. Like, I think that there's a balance between having a plan. Like you definitely want to have a plan, but you don't want to get too caught up in creating the plan that you mistake that as taking action and actually starting. And so I think what the biggest thing that I've learned is like, okay, how do you balance out planning, but more so taking action on what it is that you want to do? Because there's certain things that you just can't plan for that are going to come up, and you won't know how to deal with it, and you don't know what it's going to be until you actually get into the game and, start moving and figuring it out. And I just think that it's been such a crazy process, even with this podcast, right? There's been a lot of times where I'm just like, why are we doing this? Should I just stop? Or, does this even make sense to keep on doing? And I think what happened is I found out that I think they said like 90% of podcasts or people that start podcasts quit by episode 20. And so this is episode 22, and we've showed up every single week, recorded the podcast and put it out. And I think that there's something to say about that, especially for me, right? Like, even if I think it's bigger than any external factor. I think it's a big accomplishment for myself, because there's been so many times where I've started and stopped certain things. Even this podcast, like I tried the podcast before where I got to literally like episode 3, because I was trying to do everything on my own. And it was just, I was focused too much on the results, wanting to have that video go viral, having that clip go viral, where if that didn't happen, I'll be like, well, what's the point? And then I just realized, like, I don't know, before we even started this podcast, I wanted to transfer my thinking or move my thinking into, instead of focusing on the results, focusing on the process. And I know I talk about that. It's a common theme that I talk about throughout this podcast and everything, but the process is what I've been focused on. Did we show up this week, record an episode, and put it out on Monday like we said that we were going to do? And if we did that every week, that's a win. It's not so much of the results of what happens to that, because I can't, my team, we can't control what happens. We can't control how many people listen to it, what the algorithm does, if even if people like it. And so I just think that there's just so much power in showing up, and I'm very excited about 2024. I think a big thing and a goal of mine this year is to transform this podcast from interviewing guests remotely and doing it on camera to actually getting a studio and setting up a studio and having the podcast in person. That's something that I'm really excited about. And again, it kind of goes back to, I'm not sure how those details are going to look. I'm not sure how we're going to get there. I'm not sure where the studio is going to be. I don't know how the studio is going to look. I don't know how, any of this stuff is going to happen, but I know it will. And I trust that it will. So I'm just showing up every single day, showing up in my business, showing up and doing what I need to do. And I'm letting God, the universe, whatever it is that you believe, take care of the rest. Like there's so many things that are out of our control. But there are certain things that are in our control. And so another thing that I was thinking about too, that correlates to this about just showing up and letting the details work itself out, is I was watching Leave the World Behind on Netflix. If you guys haven't seen that movie, go see it. It's a crazy movie, crazy movie. But there was a scene in there, and this is not a spoiler, I guess. Maybe it is a spoiler. No, it's not a spoiler because it's a quote. It was in The Pursuit of Happiness. So I won't give context of what it is. But one of the characters in the movie told a story about a man that was stuck in his house, and there was a big flood. And so the water was coming up and raising up in his house. And he said, there was a boat that came by and said, "Hey man, I can save you. Come get on the boat." And he said, "No, don't worry. God will save me." And then the boat drove off and the water went up, a little bit more. And then another person came in and was like, "Hey man, come on. I could save you." He's like, "No, don't worry. God is going to save me." And then the boat got to the water got to the roof, and there was a helicopter that came and said, "Hey man, come on. We can get you out." He said, "No, don't worry. God is going to save me." And the guy ended up drowning, going to heaven. And he asked God, he was like, "Why didn't you save me?" He said, "I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter. What more did you want?" And I think that story, and that's not like exactly word for word of how it went, but you get the gist of it. But that story had me really reflecting this year around the balance of setting an intention and having a vision and being able to manifest stuff in your life, but then also mixing it up with the execution and the work and the thing that you want maybe looking different than what you thought it was going to look like. I think sometimes we feel like this, whatever we're supposed to get is supposed to look a certain way and it's supposed to be presented and get delivered in a certain way, when sometimes in reality, that's not the case at all. It comes in a completely different way. And I think that once we start to understand what these opportunities look like, we'll be able to take advantage of them. You know, I kind of correlated it. I did this video and talked about this before is, have you ever had like a friend or a family member get a new car, and you're like, oh, this is a nice car. And then all of a sudden when you're out driving, you see that car everywhere. You're like, this car, I've never seen it before, but now all of a sudden I see it. That car probably was around the whole time. You just didn't pay attention to it. And so I kind of correlated that to opportunities, right? There's opportunities all around us. There are so many opportunities around you. I truly believe that everything that you need is already right in front of you. You just have to know what it looks like and have to understand that it may not be packaged up what it looks like. And so just like that car, looking at opportunities, and once you start understanding and recognizing what opportunities are, that they come through people, they come through relationships, they come through providing value, they come through helping out, they come through giving, they come through these different avenues than I used to think they would come. But the more you start to see these opportunities come, and the more you start to recognize what opportunities look like, you start to be able to understand the process of how things work. And it was just a big thing for me of just thinking about we're in control of a lot of things, but we're also not in control of a lot of things. And it's this balance of really focusing on the things that are going to move you forward and the things that you actually could control. Because that's one thing that I used to stress about. Like, I think that was a big thing that I worked through in therapy, and I'm really proud of it, is that I used to stress so much on the things that I couldn't control. I mean, I used to obsess with the things that I couldn't control, that were just out of my grasp. And, you know, doing these sessions and having, a therapist to be able to work through and kind of correlate stuff, they don't tell you what to do. They don't like even give advice. A good therapist is just able to help interpret what you say and then put it in a whole different perspective, or be able to kind of like relay that same thing of what you said, but in a different context. And you start connecting the dots and stuff. And so I just realized, like, majority of the things that I used to stress about never came true. And I'm like, I'm putting myself through this situation as if it is happening, and I'm feeling it emotionally. I'm getting, anxiety, and I'm feeling like nervous about it or whatever, but the situation has not happened. It's me thinking about the situation. So I'm putting myself through this situation that doesn't exist, that doesn't even end up happening. Why am I putting myself through that? Like, it was just such a weird connection and correlation. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to stop doing this, because if all of this is just an imaginary thought that I'm creating in my head of worst case scenario and is creating this, why don't I just refocus that thought into something that's actually going to serve me, something that's actually going to not cause all of that internal turmoil and stuff. And so, and then the things that you can control, fix it. Just fix it. Just do it, fix it, get it done, and then just let go of the rest. And it's just brought a lot of peace to my life. And I think if that sounds familiar, if that's something that you're dealing with, I think it's something to reflect on and really think about, because it's completely changed my life when I just stopped stressing about the things that I couldn't control and focused on the things that I could. And another practice that I would do too is, like, when I'm such a big procrastinator, and I've worked through that a lot. And what I'm learning about myself of how to work through that procrastination is, most of the time it's the thinking of it that causes the stress of it. It's not the actual action of getting it done. And so I've been playing this little thing where in the morning, if I have a busy day and I need to do a lot of stuff and I'm starting to feel anxious about it or whatever, I'm doing this thing where I'm like, okay, that let's keep that thought and let's keep all of that you're feeling, but let's just move it to the side real quick. Let's just move and get stuff done. And then I could come back and stress about it tonight, like later. And it's this weird thing that I'm able to kind of not get rid of the thought, not get rid of the feelings, right? Because sometimes, you can't help how you feel or how you feel, think about something. But what I'm saying is like, keep that feeling, but just move it over here while you're moving and getting the stuff done. And then we could come back and soak in it and, do all of this stuff. And mentally I'm playing myself with that. And then after I go through my day and I get my stuff done and I'm like, okay, let me go back to this thought. And I'm like, wait, I already got everything done. And it's been, I don't know, it's been something that I've been experimenting with that's been really, really helping me. It's like, don't try to remove the feelings and the thought. Just try to put it to the side and work around it. And then by the time you work around it, you realize I'm not stressing about anything, like it's gone. Like it really wasn't that hard. I really didn't I didn't really need to worry about what I needed to do. It wasn't as hard as I thought or as I was making it in my head. And so I just think that has been something that has been super valuable and has been super helpful for me, is acknowledging those emotions and those feelings and just moving it to the side a little bit while you get the stuff done, and then going back, telling yourself, I'm going to go back and readdress it. So I'm not getting rid of it, keep it there, but you're able to get your stuff done and then come back. Because I've found like when you try to force things out and you try to force yourself, it just makes it worse versus like going with the ebbs and flows. You got to go with it. Like if you're feeling like you're unmotivated and you can't get stuff done, it's hard to like trick yourself and tell yourself like, oh, I feel great, this and this. Like, nah, you don't, So I think acknowledging that makes sense and not trying to remove that from you, but trying to work with it. And that's been the thing that I've really been learning, is you got to work with your stuff. You got to work with it, and you got to understand how you work and the little triggers and, all these little points for you. So I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of rambling, but these are all just things that I've been thinking about, things that have helped me, things that I'm bringing into 2024, trying to develop and work on and perfect or improve. I feel like there's no really perfection. You could just improve. And so I don't know, hopefully something that I said, you can take something from this as you start to think about the new year and actionable, practical stuff that you can do. So yeah, as always, I truly appreciate everybody's, it's been crazy. I've been getting emails and messages and, with the podcast, especially from the audio version, you never know who's listening. And so it's been cool to, get these random messages from people that I just never thought were paying attention or listening and saying that it was helpful and stuff like that. And so my promise for 2024 is I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to stay in the game. I'm going to control the things that I can control. I'm going to try to bring as much value as I can. And I'm going to keep it pushing. So I appreciate you all. I hope you have an amazing start to this year. Again, I'm very, very excited about this. We got so much stuff in the business and podcast. We got a lot of things planned that I'm just extremely excited about. And so, hope you all are doing well, rested, and I will talk to y'all in a minute. Peace.